approach, go at 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Yeah, 6316, North approach, going to maintain 3,000, number 1 for the right.
3,000, go 6316.
Redwood 811, going to maintain 4,000, airport's open to fog, 1, 2, 3, 4,000, Redwood 11, and Redwood 11, clear to go, make it runway clear up the front. Clear to go, 2 runway 11, Captain, North approach,
6 Roman Carefly, runway heading, runway 5. Good takeoff.
Check!
And we are ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport, a 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun, when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and 7 trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio Weekend. This is your host before the host, Elizabeth Anglin, coming to you from sunny and windy Madrid, New Mexico, far to the south of Cascadia, where it's not very wet. It's often very dry. Welcome, and I am looking forward to tonight's guest with our regular host, the host that is the host, James Tyson. We'll be talking tonight with Laurie McQuary, psychic consultant. She was voted Portland's best psychic by Willamette Week, and she has been involved in psychic police investigations for over 30 years. She's now semi-retired. She lives with her husband, Bob Lee, who was a police detective in Lake Oswego, Oregon. And they have both recently moved out to beautiful Central Oregon to enjoy retirement together, but she's still working, and you may have seen her on television and read about her in the paper or seen the book in which her story is listed called Hidden Files by Sue Kovach. So it's going to be a very interesting talk tonight between James and Laurie. And before we do that, just some news from Spaced Out Radio and Spaced Out Radio Weekend. Welcome to you all. If you're new to the Spaced Out Radio Weekend experience, you are listening to us on Spaced Out Radio, which is at spacedoutradio.com, or you're listening at Revolution Radio on Studio B, where the chat room is at freedomslips.com, or you are a very special Spaced Out Radio space traveler, and you are listening to us probably on spacedoutradio.com or on Revolution Radio, and on our chat room on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. If you'd like to become a Spaced Out Radio Space Traveler, you've been listening for a few weeks or a month and think that you're all in, that you like the guest, you like who's talking, you like the subject matter, please consider becoming a Spaced Out Radio Space Traveler. In this, you can listen to all the archives. We have monthly swag. We have blogs. We have special guests only for space travelers, and we have our very special Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers chat room on Facebook. For $5 a month, you get all this. It's a bargain, I tell you, a bargain at twice the price for $5 a month. That it helps support what we've been trying to grow and create here, the best in cryptozoological, ufological, alternate biological entity studies. You know, sometimes I poke James Tyson and go, "What are you?" No, really, what are you? sort of like a little sister. What are you? What are you made of? What is that? Marshmallow fluff? I'm just kidding. Paranormal and intuitive programming is what we have, not just poking James Tyson, because, it's just too easy. He's too fun to poke at. Poke! Before we start tonight, it's been a wild week in Madrid, New Mexico. I'm going to give you a little news of the town, even though you probably have no idea where this town is. We are somewhere on the Turquoise Trail, one of the prettiest little roads in all of America, through the Ortiz Mountains, in between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Madrid is an artist colony, one of the only remaining first hippie communes and artist colonies in the United States. Am I hippie? I've always considered myself to be a neo-hippie, so, I have had dreadlocks from time to time. Yes, you will catch me in tie-dye. Yes, I wear sarongs as skirts. I admit it. And, various and sundry herb has been smoked. Not lately, but it has been smoked. All right. And that being said, in Madrid, New Mexico, we had a wild week. We don't know how it happened. We don't know why it happened. But at 5 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday morning, one of our local mine drivers for the gravel mine lost control of his gravel truck, which was actually carrying dry concrete at the time, and it flipped it over into an arroyo, and he was unfortunately killed. And he's been walking around town, or he was for a few days walking around town, looking at the scene of the accident because they couldn't get the gravel truck out of the arroyo. And it was the oddest thing. There was no sign that he stepped on the brake. There was no sign that anything untoward happened, except he might have been going too fast. But if he hadn't lost control exactly where he lost control, his truck, his giant concrete-filled semi-length truck, would have taken out at least 2 houses and the people with them. And for whatever reason, whether it's the angels on our shoulders, whether it's the fact that we're all hippies, whether we've all invoked divine intervention, he was the only person who was killed in this accident. He took out 2 Saabs. Now, I don't know how you feel about Saabs. Some people don't like Saabs. He took out 2 Saabs, and he took himself out. And I'm laughing only because he didn't take out more people, or the truck didn't take out more people. I talked to him. I saw him walking up and down the street looking at the accident, as we all were, feeling very, very sad at this very Mercury retrograde event. And I asked him, I said, what happened? Did you have a heart attack, a stroke? What happened? He didn't report any physical issues whatsoever. He just said, I flipped over. And my thought is, he might have been going too fast. He might have been sleepy. And he woke up when the truck was flipping over into the arroyo. An arroyo is basically like a creek or a ditch that only runs when it's raining. There's only water in it when it's raining in New Mexico. So it was unexpected, and he walked around town. It is a ghost town. He walked around town and looked at things for a while, and he has since moved on. If you're listening from Madrid, it's very sad. There's not really... Even the person it happened to doesn't know why it happened. And we are just very, very lucky that it happened exactly where and when it happened, and nobody else was hurt in the process. So that's our ghostly happenings in Madrid, New Mexico, where the paranormal is often a daily occurrence, as it was this week with our concrete gravel truck driver losing it, and everybody being quite sad. It took them all of 3 days to get the truck out of the arroyo, and they closed down our street for a week. And so, we're going to do a clearing. We're going to have some people get together. It's always a good idea when there's a traumatic event happens for people to get together and do a clearing. In other weird and uncomfortable news. Eric Cooperstown in Cascadia experienced a mall shooting, and they're going to be talking about that tomorrow night on S4, about the effects of violence on, basically the spirit, the mind, energies in a place, and sort of how are we all dealing with this random, instead of random acts of kindness, random acts of violence that have been happening in the United States and other places in the world lately, as well as planned acts of violence in war zones, as we know. So it is a weekend for contemplation, a weekend of review. Yes, it's no longer Mercury retrograde, but we're still in the shadow, and it may be worth reviewing what happened, what went wrong. Tonight, for example, still very Mercury retrograde. Has anybody experienced that Microsoft Windows update that takes for freaking ever? I did last night, and I was so happy that I turned my computer on last night when I didn't have any readings or any work to do. I was just going to listen to the show, which I didn't even get a chance to do because it took over 2 hours for my computer to do the Windows update. And that, of course, was on, the day after Mercury goes direct. But, crazy. It's crazy. So if you haven't yet turned on your computer, do it this weekend when you don't have to work, or do it a couple hours before you have to do any work. I'm assuming if you're listening on your phone and not your computer, you'll go into work or wherever. Go in a little bit early. Give your computer time. If you're using a Windows computer, give it time to update, because it takes for freaking ever. And James is going through that tonight. So that's just kind of the background of how this week was. There's been a lot in the news this week in the Anomalist about hearing voices. And here's the question. How many of you hear voices? Now, as a psychic, there's clairaudience, which is hearing voices, like actually hearing voices. Clairsentience, which is feeling that you're feeling what someone else is feeling, or what somebody who's disembodied is feeling. Clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, which is seeing a situation or an event or an item, or like a gravel truck, or something happening, having a very clear vision of it happening. But you can also have clear olfactory situations where you clearly smell something. So, for example, if you had a loved one in spirit who liked to wear a certain kind of perfume, you might smell that perfume, or somebody who smoked a certain kind of cigar or a pipe, or cooked a certain favorite food. You might smell that food as part of a mediumistic experience of having a spirit around you. And this could be even if you're a paranormal investigator. You might smell instead of hear or see or feel what a spirit wants to say. You might smell it. There's clear somatic feeling, which is a kind of clairsentience where you get a clear feeling in your body. So it's a clear somatic or a clairsomatic experience. I'm a very clairsomatic psychic, so I get clairsomatic all the time, but that's also a kind of clairsentience, which is a clear feeling, because instead of an emotional feeling, it's a feeling in the body, so it's somatic. So anyway, a lot has been being written this week in the paranormal news about hearing voices. A nice article, instead of a poo-poo, oh, you do whatever your Rice Krispies tell you to do. Snap, crackle, and pop told me to go run through town naked. That kind of thing. No, this is a nice article. It's in the British Psychological Society Research Digest. You can find it at digest.bps.org.uk, and it was written on August 4th, but it just came up in the paranormal news. I guess they were stretching. But here's what research says about voice hearing. The title is, "A lot of voice hearing, quote unquote, isn't an auditory experience at all." The message from recent surveys is that it's not just people with a diagnosis of schizophrenia who hear voices in their heads. Yay! Many people considered mentally well do too. Yay! This revelation may have a welcome destigmatizing effect in terms of how people think about some of the symptoms associated with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. Aside, I ain't freaking schizophrenic. Yay! But a new study published in Psychosis asks us to hang on a minute to say that one hears voices can mean different things to different people. You might assume that hears voices means that a person has an hallucinated auditory experience just like someone is talking to them. But what about hearing an inner voice that is experienced like an out-of-control thought rather than an external voice? Or a heard voice that's not like either a thought or an external voice? Now, aside, as a medium, and as somebody who often has people asking me, hey, if I'm hearing voices like this, am I being a medium? And I'll have to shake my head and say, no, you're being, kind of gently, kindly say, no, if you hear voices like that won't shut up, that's kind of being schizophrenic. Sorry. And this will be somebody who hears out of control voices that will say negative things and not be quiet. And that is actually oftentimes more related with schizophrenia than with any sort of mediumistic event or negative entity or anything like that. It means that it oftentimes means that there's a gene that's out of place, that there's a biochemical situation that has arisen in a part of the brain where there's this repetitive verbal badgering that it just gets louder, it gets softer, but it isn't quiet. So if that's happening to you, get checked out. That's not the kind of thing that happens to most spirit mediums. Most of spirit mediumship is contained within sittings, within sessions, within meditations, and when you're done, unless it's something like, you've invited your guides to go shopping with you because you want to pick out the perfect gift for mom, in which case you'll hear the red one, and she'll like that. But that's a different situation altogether because it's direct, it's to the point, it's low entropy. But somebody hearing voices that are just nagging and aren't their husband and aren't their wife in the other room, mumbling or nagging, but are definitely something mental, be careful because you might be in the 1.5% of people who have a form of schizophrenia. Anyway, that's my long aside. Continuing on with the British Psychological Society article, next paragraph, our knowledge of the experience of voice hearing among patients has been limited by the fact that a lot of psychiatric research in this area, though not all, has been categorical in nature. For instance, a typical psychiatric scale used in research or the clinic includes a vague item like, patient reports voices that no one else hears. And a tick here can conceal a huge range of different experiences. So, for example, patient reports hearing voices that no one else hears. Patient reports seeing things that no one else sees. I will admit that when I took my psychological test as an alien abductee, and they gave me every single test that they could think of to give me, I will admit that when I got to this kind of vague item, patient, and mind the one thing that I thought about for a minute, patient reports seeing things that no one else sees, I said, well, I know 5 other people who have seen aliens. So I didn't tick that box, patient reports seeing things that no one else sees, because I knew 5 other people who had seen aliens. So, even yourself, when you're taking the test, you can self-judge. Has anybody else seen aliens that look like this? Yes. People that Bud has worked with, people that people that are in the field, yes, they've seen this. But don't pick the box that you're seeing something that no one else sees, because, if you're seeing something some other people have seen, then they've seen it too. Don't pick that box. Just saying. Not to fudge your test, but like if you see something nobody else sees, then you got to have a question about this. For the new research that is less vague and categorical, Nev Jones and Tanya Lerman conducted an in-depth interview with 80 people diagnosed with schizophrenia in the U.S., India, and Ghana about their firsthand experiences of hearing voices. There was a great variety between participants in their descriptions of voice hearing, and also within each individual participant's own descriptions. Perhaps more importantly, while 79% of the participants reported at least some limited experience of the hallucinated sound of external voices, as if someone was audibly speaking to them, a much smaller proportion, 17.5%, said this was their dominant experience of voice hearing. Now, as a psychic, this is my aside, I generally don't hear voices as if, my clear audience is not someone in the room. It's someone speaking to me through thoughts, and it can be in their own voice, but it won't come through my ears. It's, if you ever meditate and you sit and you listen to your own thoughts while you're not talking, my clear audience is that type of situation where a thought will come to me, and it will come with the intonation, and sometimes it will come with the same kind of sound that the person had, or the same kind of timbre and intonation that they had in their voice, and also the same sense of humor and, sarcasm and facetiousness. But it will come as if it's a thought in my own head, even though I'm not necessarily thinking that thought and I feel divorced from it. I will hear it in my head, not through my ears. I do know psychics who hear things in the room, but I know very few of them. I think only 1 or 2 have reported this to me. I'm curious about it. I don't know how many of you have actually had clear sentience that is like hearing a voice in the room. To me, that seems highly hallucinatory, but hey, people tell me as a psychic I hallucinate all the time, so who am I to say what hallucination is? Moving on with the article. The most common dominant experience for participants was to say they had a mixture of auditory and thought-like voices. 29% reported having this. Another 15% said their dominant experience was to hear thought-like voices that seemed foreign and alien, but clearly non-auditory. So again, not hearing it through their ears. Other categories were in between, being neither auditory or thought-like. They were limited auditory, an auditory experience, but just simple words or sounds. A lot of abductees have this happen. A lot of beeping, a lot of whirring, 60-cycle hums. So that would be in the limited auditory range. Transformed was another category, which is when real voices or sounds were misheard as saying something different. And then multisensory voices were heard involving visual experiences as much as or more than auditory. So this would be somebody having the clairaudient or the vision of something along with a voice narrating it, for example. And this is, for example, one participant described how the voice will show me all my enemies. Well, again, if a voice is showing you all your enemies, you might want to question that because, paranoid, just a little bit. On with the article. Intriguingly, some participants described how a voice could begin as thought-like, but if they ignored it, it became more auditory. If I try ignoring them inside my brain, they like to come out. They start telling me things. The researchers said interviews showed that there is a huge variety in the ways that people diagnosed with schizophrenia hear voices, and that it is very difficult for both patients and clinicians to find ways to accurately describe these experiences. Another thing, many of the participants said that they found most difficult about hearing voices was the disruption to their own thoughts. Rather than the sensory aspect of the experience, indeed, by emphasizing the normality of the auditory aspect of hearing voices, the research said there was a risk of mental health professionals presenting a misleading view of what at least some patients are in fact struggling with. And there is a woman who wrote a book. I wish I could remember the name of it, and I'm being a little lame not to get on Amazon. But she was a spirit medium. She did a lot of New Age work in the 70s and the early 80s. And she was trained, I would not say, she was trained by some local people in Denver, Colorado. I wouldn't say that they were necessarily the best from what she wrote about them. But, she had done Esalen courses and a lot of other different work and was a spirit medium. And one day, and her mother who had been schizophrenic, one day she decided to tell her guides and everyone that she worked with as a spirit medium that she didn't want them around anymore. And she told them to go away. And she had a few days of not hearing anything. And then all of a sudden what happened and what came back to her were these voices that badgered her by telling her that she stunk and she sucked and she was terrible and she should kill herself. And this was the same type of thing that had happened with her mother, and her mother had been institutionalized for this. And the way that she took it, eventually seeking help with these schizophrenic voices, she ended up, going to different churches and going for different therapies. And finally, she became a born-again Christian, and that seemed to help, but she still had the voices. But the way she interpreted that was that none of the things that she had ever done as a spirit medium were valid, that all along the voices that had been helpful to people when she had done sessions with them and been helpful to her had actually been these demonic voices or these schizophrenic voices posing as helpful spirits. This is not something that I ascribe to. As you know, she told the spirits that were helping her to go away. Who knows if they were keeping her natural biochemical genetic schizophrenia at bay? Who knows if it was just her time to become schizophrenic? But she showed clear and classic signs of schizophrenia versus spirit mediumship, and that the voices were talking to her all the time, and she could not get them to shut up, and they were not saying nice things. And if this is happening to you, that is not spirit mediumship. That is a sign that you may be in the 1.5 to 2% of people who have some sort of schizoaffective schizophrenic disorder. And there's no reason to stigmatize it, because I know quite a few powerful healers and shamans who are also schizoaffective. And, they wouldn't be as powerful as they are because perhaps if they didn't have this genetic propensity, or perhaps they would, but they can actually do some pretty wonderful stuff. So in any case, are you hearing voices? That's the question for today. I hear voices. Actually, I hear my dog thinking at me, give me the cat food bowl. Give me the cat food bowl. Please, please, give me the wet food. And the cats. I hear animal voices. I'm an animal communicator. I'm sure they'll come up with some psychological, diagnosis of animal communication someday. Okay. Speaking of psi and voices, we also have an article this week about humans having a sixth sense about being watched. Yes, you do. How many of you have had this? Like you're washing dishes and somebody, walks into the doorway behind you in the kitchen and they start watching you and you just kind of feel creeped out, or you turn and look and they've just gotten there. Yeah, because they're watching you. So this is from Mysterious Universe. mysterious.org. It's 2016-09. Humans have a sixth sense about being watched. You can find it on mysteriousuniverse.org. Here's the article. Do you ever feel that someone is watching you? You are not alone, and it may not be your imagination. It was reported that 94% of people have experienced that feeling of being watched from behind, and they have been watched. Scientists can now explain why we feel that others are watching us. Dave Scott, who often has various and sundry beings watching him through his window, he knows when he's being watched. Recent research reveals how our minds play tricks on us. We have an innate mechanism that detects and shifts our attention to eyes. Newborns prefer staring at faces with a direct gaze. It isn't a sixth sense per se, but a psychological and physiological response. Human eyes are actually quite distinct from other species' eyes, and because of it, we catch attention from others and note the direction of their gaze. The white area, the sclera that surrounds the pupil, makes our eyes easy to notice. In other animals, the eyes are larger and or the sclera darker to ward off predators. Shifts in our attention from one person to another are a reflex that directs our attention in line with their gaze. The human gaze is optimized for easy detection, and thus we can determine whether someone is looking at us. We can use other cues to tell us when someone is looking at us in our peripheral vision. We may rely on the position or movement of their head if they are wearing sunglasses. It's their head or body cues that often tell us. The person may notice you looking behind and meet your gaze. It is actually your mind playing tricks on you. I don't know about that article. Dr. Harriet Dempsey Jones, a postdoctoral researcher in clinical neurosciences at the Nuffield Department of Clinical Neurosciences at the University of Oxford, has written, quote, sadly, for those who wish we were X-Men, it appears much of the body research supporting psychic staring effect appears to be suffering from methodological issues. You know what that means? It means they can't figure out how to write a paper on their methodology for studying it. That's what it means. Or unexplained experimenter effects. You know what that means? People can't describe what they're doing. For example, when certain experimenters act as the watcher in these experiments, they seem to be more successful at getting people to detect their stares than other experimenters. It is almost certainly an unconscious bias, perhaps due to initial interactions with the experimenter, or some people are just better with body language and moving their eyes. Memory biases may also come into play. If you feel like you're being watched and turn around to check, another person in your field of view might notice you looking around and shift their gaze to you. When your eyes meet, you assume this individual has been looking all along. Situations where this happens are more memorable when you look around to find no one looking at you. You mean like when we look around and we think there might be Bigfoot and we can't see it? Yeah, I bet this person would just freak out with a Bigfoot conversation. In any case, that's what Dr. Harriet Dempsey Jones has to say, which is, this is really hard to study and we don't know how to do it. When somebody says methodological issues, that's what they mean. We haven't got a method for studying it well. Anyway, the rest of this article says, it is interesting to note that disturbances of normal gaze have been observed. Autistic people spend less time fixating on eyes of others. Socially anxious people fixate on eyes more than those with low anxiety. The wide-eyed dog gets adopted. One study has shown that dogs in a shelter who gazed at humans while furrowing their brows, making their eyes appear larger, get adopted significantly faster than dogs who don't. The sixth sense may be highly exaggerated, but there, the eyes have it. You know, being socially anxious sometimes, I've never felt like I fixated on eyes. I felt like I fixated on my feet. As in, oh my gosh, what am I doing in this room? Let me stare at my feet for a while. I like Mysterious Universe. I don't know if all of this is true. All right, so that's what was coming up in our, about psi stuff and hearing voices. There's some weird stuff that came up about retrocausality and time travel. This is kind of a weird article. It's in the nightshirt, which is at thenightshirt.com. P equals 3, question mark P equals 3920. I'm going to do my best with this because, it's interesting. Retrocausality is an interesting premise. And what they've got on this page, if you can go to the nightshirt and look for the retrocausality, the timeline, nuts and bolts of a biologic feature detector. What they have is something that looks like a tsubo, which is, if you're doing acupressure or acupuncture, it's a little energy structure in the body that if you're doing acupuncture, tsubos are made exactly the way this little graphic they have is. They're little energy wells where they can be open and energy can be flowing, and they can start to close up and energy becomes stuck, and then they can become completely closed and stagnant, and then they can start to become stagnant and the energy becomes dull and starts to fade away. But anyway, they have this picture of something that looks exactly like a tsubo, a T-S-U-B-O, if you want to look that up. Here's what our wonderful author has to say about the time-eye nuts and bolts of a future biological detector. Rubbing my temples and squinting, I foresee that no less a science writer than James Gleick will very shortly be publishing a book called Time Travel. Unlike his most famous book, Chaos, which was incredibly forward-looking, introducing a whole generation to a really cool new concept, the butterfly effect, i.e. the way a butterfly flapping its wings in Hong Kong influenced the weather in New York a week later, Time Travel will be, oddly backward-looking, a retrospective view of H.G. Wells' sci-fi trope and its impact on our culture. It will only barely, glancingly remark on the emerging science that is destined to make time travel, or at least time-traveling information, a reality. I tell you, folks, we're already there. Time-traveling information is a reality. It may not be nuts and bolts reality, but for psychics and Reiki doers, it's a reality. I foresee that despite brief obligatory musings on John Wheeler and wormholes, Gleick will use the word retrocausation only once in the book. Retrocausation is a now topic, he will say, and leave it at that. Mostly he will reiterate again and again how time travel is obviously impossible and that it's only a meme, a literary device, a metaphor for our increasingly sped up and time-obsessed society. Causes precede effects, and that's that. I'm a big admirer of Gleick, but this will be a pretty unfortunate oversight on his part. Retrocausation is indeed a topic, one that is about to sweep over our culture like a tidal wave. How did he miss it? The idea has been there from the beginning in modern physics upper echelons. Effects can, theoretically, precede their causes. But only in the past decade or so has technology finally existed to test the idea. An increasing number of truly mind-blowing experiments are now confirming what Yakir Aronoff, for example, intuited already in the 1960s, that every single causal event in our world, every single interaction between two particles is not only propagating an influence forward in the intuitive billiard ball fashion, but also carrying channels of influence backwards from the future to the present and from the present to the past. Think about that. That's really, really, really kind of cool. Until now, physicists have misinterpreted this whole half of causation as randomness, quantum indeterminacy. But Einstein never liked randomness as an inherent property of nature, and Aronoff wasn't satisfied either. And so, newly developed experiments utilizing methods of weakly measure measure particles at one point in time and then conventionally measured at a subset of them a second later point in time or post-selection are showing Aronoff was right and that Einstein's intuitions were on the mark. God really doesn't play dice. He truly is a master archer. And time is all connected. All right. That being said, I think we should invite James in to see how he's doing. James,
Really?
are you around? Yeah.
I'm around. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Now, what was the retrocausality of your computer issue today?
I cranked it up at around 10 after 8, and it just said, we're loading, updating, whatever the hell it said. And it just went on for a long period of time. It was a bit of a pain, and it came back on 10 minutes after the show started.
Well, cool.
Perfect.
That's
just
it's perfect.
perfect.
And you're back.
Why, I oughta. Everything is okay, except I have to. I'm trying to find something for Dave, so just bear with me.
All right,
but
I'm
keep
gonna
talking.
I'm going to read some more about time while Dave goes off and tries to find something for Dave, who tends to sense with.
Finding something for Dave.
I mean, James goes off and tries to find something for Dave.
Yes, trying, very trying.
They're not the same quantum particle. They're two different people. Okay, so anybody want to think about quantum entanglement?
For crying out loud. Really?
Yeah, entanglement. Quantum entanglement. Every anomalist's favorite quantum quirk. When particles are created together or interact in some way, their characteristics become correlated such that they cannot be described independently of each other. You see what I did there with James and Dave? I quantumly entangled them as the same person. They become part of a single entangled state, which in the Dave-James situation is incredibly funny. If you then send these two particles, photons, or say Dave and James, way far away from each other, even to the ends of the universe, they will behave identically, at least in my mind, when one of them is measured. If you measure photon A, say that's Dave, and find that it has a certain spin or polarity, the other one is guaranteed to have an identical or corresponding value, as if they somehow communicated with each other over long distances to get their stories straight. That James and Dave. This phenomena was originally a prediction made by Einstein and two of his colleagues, Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen, collectively known as EPR, as a way to show that quantum physics must be incomplete. Entanglement seemed paradoxical and thus impossible because somehow it would involve information traveling between those two particles at speed faster than light, i.e. instantaneously, thus violating the theory of relativity. Yet in 1964, a CERN physicist named John Bell published a theorem proving that EPR prediction actually held. Subsequent experiments supported the existence of such states. And thus, I have entangled Dave and James and James and Dave in my own head because, hey, it's quantum. They're related. They're both on Spaced Out Radio. They're male. They're hosts. I'm not confused. I'm just making it simple. So, have you given him his stuff yet, James? He went away. Okay. Well, there's another book about Bell's theorem called How the Hippies Saved Physics. And this is by David Kaiser. And
I'm sorry.
It lies... He's back faster than the speed of light. Quicker than a speeding bullet. Anyway, a good book to read is called How the Hippies Saved Physics by David Kaiser. And you can find that on Amazon.com. And it's about a group of eccentric physicists in Berkeley in the early 1970s who banded together to explore quantum physics and quantum entanglement. So check it out. because, hey, I live in a hippie commune, and I think hippies very likely did save physics. That being said, back to James. How you doing, James? He does this to me every single time. I'm here. No, I'm not here. No, I'm here. No, I'm not here. He's like that quantum particle who's winking in and out of existence. He's on one side of the universe, and then he's on the other side of the universe, and then he comes back. And I'm like the little voice in his head that goes, James,
Yeah?
nag.
What?
Yeah. Oh, you are here.
Well,
Okay.
I wasn't, and I was, because I was trying to send that thing to Dave, and then it shut down Skype. So that was a little bit embarrassing, if I may say so.
That's your intro, right? Yeah, you better send him that. Does he have it?
No, I'm going to have to do it another way. So keep on talking.
Okay. I'm keeping on talking. So that's about all I have to say about quantum entanglement because, you know.
I know it's going to be on the test.
It's going to be on the test later. Other things that happened this week. A Bigfooter, Dr. Thomas Scott Ruth, passed away. Dr. Thomas Scott Ruth was a passionate squatcher with a penchant for gifting the hairy guys and recording their vocals. He was decent, meticulous, and a good friend to many. Dr. Ruth, you will be missed. And now you know the Sasquatch secrets from the other side. So for those of you who knew Dr. Ruth, just so you know, he has passed away. He was born on September 7th, 1937. He died on September 16th. And he did work in Idaho and Michigan, all over the place. And, he has a Master's of Science and a PhD from Marquette University, postdoctoral fellowship from the University of Illinois, Urbana, and he came to Washington University and then the St. Louis University School of Medicine for 30 years. And he was a doctor of physiology and pharmacology. His lifelong research interest was the study of the estrogen receptor, and he was funded primarily by the National Institutes of Health and published extensively. Following his retirement, he was granted Professor Emeritus. So he was, a good guy and, one of us, exceedingly smart and Squatch researcher. So we're very, very sad. You can find news of his passing in cryptozoonews.com, and it's ruh/obit is where you'll find it. So we send you on with heavy hearts, but happy for you on the other side, Dr. Ruh. We hope you find out lots of good stuff. And come back and tell me. I'm a spirit medium. Here I am. Come back, tell me where to tell people to go look. Or maybe just tell me about my own guys. Because, sometimes I just like to know what's happening with the family of Bigfoot that I know about. Let's see. I suppose there was more Bigfoot in Wales. It looks like there was. What else happened this week? Mysterious phantom attackers. Let's see. Something else inexplicable and a little terrifying was the philosophy of Father Amorth, leader of the world's exorcist. Now, he's dead, but he was often blaming practices such as yoga or reading Harry Potter books on the increase in what he believed were possessions. He believed that some of the Vatican priests and cardinals were members of satanic sects. And in spite of what we think may have been misguidance, Father Amorth set the standard for all exorcism performed by the Catholic Church, and he will be greatly missed. I just don't feel like reading Harry Potter has ever caused me to become possessed, nor would it. Now, I suppose if maybe someone else it could. So this is in Mysterious Universe, where they've written about Father Amorth, and the article is by Paul Seaburn, and it goes as follows. If there's something strange in your neighborhood and you think it might be because you're using a Ouija board or playing Charlie Charlie, who are you going to call? Over 70,000 people or their concerned relatives and friends reportedly called Father Gabriel Amorth, the chief exorcist of the Diocese of Rome, founder and president for the life of the International Association of Exorcists, lover of the Exorcist movie, and hater of the Harry Potter books and yoga. If you're in line to see him put down the Ouija board and call someone else, Father Amorth has passed away at the age of 91. And then here's a quote from him. From their mouths, anything can come out, pieces of iron as long as a finger, but also rose petals. Father Amorth loved The Exorcist, the original 1973 film, and claimed it gave an accurate, though exaggerated, depiction of what happens during an exorcism, the practice of removing demons, evil spirits, or other entities from persons who believe they're possessed or show signs of possession. While primarily associated with the Roman Catholic Church, exorcisms are also performed in Hinduism, Judaism, Taoism, and Islam. During his time as the world's leading exorcist, he saw the numbers of exorcisms and exorcists grow dramatically. There are over 200 exorcists in the U.S., one for each diocese. For example, he says, I am convinced that the Nazis were all possessed by the devil. If you think about what types like Stalin, Hitler did, certainly they were possessed by the devils. I can't necessarily disagree with him. According to the secret Vatican documents, Pope Pius XII tried a long-distance exorcism on Hitler, which obviously didn't work. Father Amorth says that the exorcist has to be in front of the possessed, who must be willing and give consent to the exorcism. That's one of his less controversial statements. And actually, for anybody who's working with somebody, if you are working doing clearing, the person has to give you consent in order for it to work well, because they have to take responsibility for, one of the ways to get it to work is to get them to take full responsibility for themselves, and it strengthens them to do that. Father Amorth also said, behind Harry Potter hides the signature of the King of Darkness, the devil. Oh my goodness. And then he said, practicing yoga is satanic and it leads to evil, just like reading Harry Potter. I don't know about that. He claimed in his 2010 memoirs that there are members of satanic sects in the Vatican, including priests and cardinals. Not to leave anyone out, he also said this in 2015. ISIS is Satan. It sounds like Father Amorth might have been declaring many things to be evil in order to drum up exorcism jobs, but he claimed in an interview that he only performed them on those he truly believed were possessed and sent most people to seek medical and psychiatric help instead, telling them, you have no devil. If you have a problem, talk to a good vet. Vet? Well, Father Amorth isn't here to clarify that one. However, it seems like better advice than giving up yoga. And, he was an older guy, so, a lot of these quotes from 2010 and beyond, who knows what was going on medically with him. But Father Amorth, thank you for your service.
It's
You're
kind
back.
of funny. Yes, and my front too. It'd be kind of interesting to find out what's happened with him on the other side. He kind of goes there and goes, oh, I was so wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
not that one. Those two I screwed up on. That's okay. And what do you mean you have a library full of Harry Potter books? It's hard. And, I'd like to thank you for coming on, because you carried the entire hour here. I really appreciate it, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. I like talking to you, and I missed you, but, I'm a tough lady.
You are.
And though I will whine and I will cry and I will get off and I'll go, James didn't talk to me. I'll get over it.
We're going to listen to some of Dave's commercials coming up in about a minute and a half, actually. And after that, we're going to be back with our wonderful little psychic investigator, Laurie McQuary. And we'll find exactly what has been going on with her in her life. And I'm actually chatting with next Saturday's guest, Karen Ada Dahlman, our Ouija board expert, and much more. We're going to bring her back and talk to her about what's going on. And she's working her way into the chat room right now. So if Karen pops in, be nice to her. And we're always going to be nice to you, Elizabeth. And we'll talk to you tomorrow night, right before Two Mediums and a Large. All righty. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Yes, you will. No, I don't want to be the large. I appreciate it. No, but I will you're not. To you. Yeah. Okay. You're half the woman you used to be. And thanks very much. And have a wonderful day in the shop tomorrow. Thank you. All right. See you guys later. Everyone's waving. Bye-bye. Bye.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I don't want to take a thing from you. I just want to feel like something real with you. I just want to fly high to another.
Hello, everybody. It's me, James Tyson, here. And I want to thank you for listening to Dave's commercials because of a computer glitch that I have caused. Well, you missed my introduction. So you have to come in tomorrow in two mediums and large and listen to the whole thing and write me a nice note. But it is I broadcasting to you from our little log cabin atop the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. And tonight we're not going too far. I'm looking down Cascadia into the bowels of Oregon. Well, not really the bowels. I don't think Oregon has bowels. That would be more Utah. But anyway, I regress. We have tonight a wonderful lady, Laurie McQuary, who has been on the psychic scene since 1985 and has had an office in Lake Oswego for over 30 years. As owner of Management by Intuition, Laurie offers consultations of both personal and business levels. She has a busy schedule consisting of private consultations, television appearances, lectures, workshops, and working with law enforcement agencies internationally as well as in the U.S. The cases range from missing persons to crime investigations. With her fascinating psychic talents and well-trained speaking ability, a lot better trained than mine, targeted workshops and providing exciting insights on how individuals can develop their own psychic awareness and how this can be used as a business tool and in personal life. Now, I first saw Laurie on a television program a few years back. This was something called Psychic Detective, and it was incredible. From Psychic Detective, I bounced around of other few bits and pieces on Laurie and her television background from Court TV. I think you're over doing something in Japan too, Laurie. You're bouncing all over the place. You have been since the early 2000s anyway. It seemed to be that seemed to be a big part of your life. But before we get into that, I'd like to welcome you back to Spaced Out Weekend. How have you been?
I've been well. I've been busy. I do have to make an addendum to what you've been saying a teeny bit. I closed my office in Lake Oswego 15 months ago. My husband finally retired from the Lake Oswego Police Department, and we moved over to Central Oregon. So I only do phone sessions now. I don't have an office per se. I have one in the home, but I do travel to go places and do workshops and such. So I'm still pretty darn busy, but we did go through this major sort of shift and change over a year ago.
But that shift seems to be quite relaxing.
You know, it's whatever you make it, James. It's a real departure, you know, from what I've done over in Portland. I lived there over 40 years, and I didn't like the rain very much, but I loved other things at Portland. And then, of course, I left my family and a lot of friends there and my wonderful clients that I loved seeing in person. But I've also done phone sessions for well over 30 years, and I don't need the person in front of me, although it's nice. I read the energy anyway, right through the phone. We do just fine. I get a picture of the person on birth date before I do their session.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So it works.
Oh, yes, I know it does. I
know. I just got through. Interesting you mentioned all the television and stuff, which has been awesome. I just spoke to a wonderful group in Portland called Camp New Era Spiritualist Foundation Fellowship Church. Lovely people. Every one of them probably psychics and mediums. I loved it. I got up, and the first thing I said was, you know, what's great about this crowd is I don't have to explain to one person here what I do, how I do, and when I do it. And they all loved that. They were all kindred spirits. Literally.
Oh, that's great. Unfortunately, tonight, everything that you didn't tell that group.
I know. I saved for you guys. I got my manual out, James. I will refer to it. I'm on it.
Excellent. It's not a big leather thing with a star on it, is it? And you keep beside your cauldron. No.
Oh yeah, right. Boiling cauldron along with the crystal ball. Actually, I had a client give me a gorgeous crystal ball years ago, so I used to leave it out as kind of a joke. People worried a little when they walked in. I said, don't worry, I don't need it. It's just there as a gift.
I got a gift from one of our listeners yesterday, and it's a scry. Is it scry? Am I saying it right? A scry mirror?
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't seen one in a long time, but I've heard of them.
Very cool. I guess you look into it, it's like the original mirror on the wall.
Yes.
Like you can.
Yes. That'd be pretty. That would be pretty.
Yeah, I've hidden it right now, so I don't want it. I've had things happen to me during the show, so I kind of don't want to look over at it and see somebody looking back at me. But Laurie,
well, you want nothing unscripted.
Right. That's happened twice. I had an orb about the size of a golf ball just move from right to left past me on my screen here. Not on the screen, but 5
you draw that energy. That's interesting energy. That's always presence of spirits when that happens. You know that.
Yeah. And I also had my dad grab my collar and pull me back into my chair. I turned around thinking it was my daughter, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
That was interesting.
Yes, it is. It is.
But more about you before we go to our next break. And that's the Jim Show. You've been doing this. You've been on the psychic scene since 1985. But what led you to the scene? When did this first come to you, or when you realized you had the ability?
Okay. Well, it kind of came to me hard. And it's on my website if people want to look it up. It's an old story. When I was 18, I had a major head injury, fell off a horse, was in a coma for 3 weeks. This was in Escondido, California, north of there, actually, Pala, California, 1 mile from an Indian reservation. I was given last rites by the priests from the reservation. Been out riding this horse, and I shouldn't have been. Anyway, I was in a coma for 3 weeks, moved from that area shortly after that, went back to Minnesota, which was not the mecca of psychic development, let me tell you, not in the 60s. People didn't want to talk about that kind of thing. I started having precognitive dreams of plane crashes, and I knew things, and I was also married to a good old South Dakota farm boy who said, "You dream what?" So it was not an easy beginning, and I kept a lot to myself, thinking, frankly, the head injury was worse than I thought. I was nuts. That's what I thought. Progressed 15 years, and I got out of that marriage, moved back to the West Coast, went to nursing school, was an intensive care nurse for 14 years, did a lot of stuff, always feeling this wonderful connection to my patients, and also studied as much as I could about metaphysics. I used to try to find groups in California to meet with that I could just learn from. And it was an interesting journey. It seemed like it took forever. But when it really hit is when I was going through being widowed. My then husband died 3 days post-op open heart surgery here in Portland. And I'd had dreams prior to that I knew what was coming. And it still didn't help, but this ability just got stronger and stronger, which it often does when there is trauma in a person's life. A lot of times it can be heightened. And from the moment he died when my baby was 5 months old and my son was 11. And at that point in time, I just said, I got it. I'm supposed to do something with this. Took a few more years. He died when I was 33, and I did not open my office until I was 44, I believe, and that was in Lake Oswego, which people kept telling me, what are you doing this for in Lake Oswego? This is the high end here. Why don't you just go downtown, where the little shops are? And I said, no. This is where I live, and this is where I'll open it, and I'll do it with style. And I did. Didn't have any money. Did a lot of Goodwill shopping and brought stuff home and put it in the office. But that's how it began. And I felt from the time that, and I did do sessions and readings out of my home, James, for years, probably 7 years before I even opened an office. I did it after I got home from work. Didn't have enough money as a nurse, and I was obviously still a single parent, didn't have any family out in the West Coast, so it was just me and the kids. So I did it partly in the beginning because I wanted to see where it was going to lead me. And it became an obsession for me once I decided that I was going to really do it for a living and make it my life. And it was not always an easy journey, but I certainly was led. So I don't know what else to say other than I opened my first office in 83, and I had clients, I had confidence in myself, but I certainly opened an office I couldn't afford, kind of Leo-like, I can do it. Jeez, I mean, it was hard. People would call me and go, I can't come during your business hours, I can only come at night. I work such and such. I was there at the office. I'd open up at 9 at night if I had to. You do what you got to do to get it going. But once I really started, it just seemed like things came to me like the media. And I always was drawn to acting or doing something in front of people. At one time I wanted to be a professional dancer and such. So it was just an easy transition for me, but it was important to me at the very basics that this was not about me, this was about the work. And I wanted to take psychic awareness, the whole field where for years the psychics I went to see, nobody advertised for fear of being run out of town on a rail, and believe me, they did it. Psychics were afraid to be public. And I said, I will do it, and I'll do it right. I want to be in front of the camera and looking normal. I don't want to look woo-woo, as I call it. I want to be taken seriously, so I represent what I know lots of wonderful people doing this work can't do, and that is be public with it. And I've taken the heat for it many times. And as Harry Truman, our one-time president, said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Well, I've stayed in the kitchen for well over 40 years, and I ain't leaving.
Well, it's brilliant. I know there's a lot of people out there who think that psychics, if they went to see one, you'd be in a tent with a crystal ball and the whole...
Most of the time, yes. And you know what? That doesn't mean that they weren't legit. Just means that's how they operated. In fact, you got to think about it. The gypsies and their wonderful crystal balls, and I've talked to quite a few of them that are pretty accurate. That's the best way you could run that kind of business in the old days, because you could pick up and leave town.
Yeah.
Don't have to do that anymore. But the point is, I know people still have a sense of, there's something not right here. I can't convince people. I can only do my job. And I would say, I've always told people, I don't mind you being a skeptic, just be an open skeptic. And
yes.
For the most part, people are. And I don't have a problem with people who think the opposite. That's their impression. I just don't want them to railroad all of us, and a lot of them do. But, I think the world is changing, and if anything, I would hope that people learn to use their intuition. We're entered times here in the last 20 years in particular where there's a lot of things that people put faith in that have crumbled. Governments, belief systems, a lot of things. And I think that we're all being tested on this. And I've talked to so many people that say to me, and I love it when I hear it, I just started listening to my inner voice, my intuition, and then they tell me the various ways that it's really, in some instances, saved their life. We had an article in the Portland newspaper here about 25 years ago. I couldn't believe it. I loved it. Picked it up. Some guy and his wife were in the Reno airport. This is a true story. And he got a funny hit. He got a funny feeling before getting on the plane, and he said, no, let's go in and play the slot machine. Talked his wife into turning around and doing that. The plane crashed, and he won a big amount of money. I was amazed that it was even written up in the newspaper. That kind of stuff usually wasn't that long ago. So people do listen. I don't think they want to advertise it like I do. They don't have to. You don't have to put a bumper sticker on your car that say, I believe in weird stuff. But I think that people are coming more to terms with solvency, being their own person, being able to think for themselves. I've had so many people after a major happening, a crime. I know you're in Canada. You probably don't remember the case down here of Diane Downs, who actually shot and killed two of her own children. She crippled one and killed one. And it was because her boyfriend didn't want kids. She worked for the postal department down here. It was a big, huge thing. This was years ago. I had probably 15 people call me the next morning at my work and say, she did it. She said a bushy-haired man had stopped them on a back road out of Eugene and shot them. And she was minorly wounded in the hand. All these people calling me. And I said, isn't this great? People are listening to that voice. Well, she was tried and convicted for it. So yeah. I think people are paying more attention. And they should. Especially in these times when, there's a lot you can't trust out there. Politically, this country's going through a lot. And boy, do people have intuition about the two people running. It's kind of interesting.
Yes.
So, and then you being a former policeman, you guys use your gut reaction. I've talked and worked with so many wonderful policemen that have told me that. Yeah, they use the facts. I want them to.
It's one of those jobs, Laurie, that it's if you look at the type of person drawn to certain jobs, and I've always said a policing career, if you're lucky enough to have that come to you in your life, and you're an empath, yes, you'll find it very satisfying. You'll struggle with a few things, but like other people's energy, but it's a satisfying career, just as if you were an empath and you were a nurse or
right.
a teacher.
Well, you learn to wear it like a coat. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
And the best doctors I ever worked with, James, the best were the intuitive ones. Not the big know-it-all who had the fancy 3 degrees from different universities. It was the doctor who says, we've got all the tests in, everything points to this, but I'm not buying that. And they were always right. They listened with everything. It was interesting. When I had one of my first offices, I had a young lady come to me who was in med school. And she just needed the part-time job, I guess. She was lovely. Her name was Karen. After working with me about 2 weeks, she said, you're really showing me some stuff that they've never showed me in school. And I said, well, of course, because you're supposed to use that sixth sense no matter what you do in life, but in particular in that kind of work. And by the time she was with me about 6 or 7 months, it was a temporary job, she said, I will be a different doctor than I started out to be. I almost cried. I said, good, because we need tenfold of you. We need thousands of you, just like that.
And I think in any career we need many, many empathetic,
yes,
high vibration people. And policing, my goodness, the amount of...
Well, look what's going on now in the police world in the States.
Yeah, it's crazy.
My Lord. And yes, but I think in any of the high-powered fields like medicine, like police work, and the humanitarians, people who work with people, period, I always find to be pretty close to that empathic sort of vibe. They may not always be aware of it. In fact, some people, and I don't know, you may agree or not agree with this, but I have certainly run into enough people who have told me they're empaths, and I mean, that's a little different than what I do, and I greatly admire it, but they got to watch their own health. And
yes.
I've got a masseuse I've used, and now I've kind of held back from using her. I love her, but she gets sick. And we've had talks. I've talked about, guarding yourself, filtering, all the things that you can do. And there's ways you can. It's just you got to be mindful, that's all. And myself, too. If I do too many cases, not so much with clients in my office, but when I was out doing cases in the early days, I could feel it. I could feel the heaviness and bring it home, even though I did stuff to kind of, I would hope, discharge that. And I would think, wouldn't it be interesting, James, if somebody could start doing studies on this, who is, maybe in medicine, but to take a look at people who have reoccurring sort of maladies. They have problems with their health, that maybe it's traced to just being that. They just open that portal and everybody's stuff comes in.
I had a meltdown after the first 8 months of being a Mountie because I didn't have a trainer and I didn't know I was this thing called an empath. I didn't know that until 2012. That's the first time I heard the word. Wow. And in 1989, if, Laurie, you called me to your house saying your car was stolen, by the time I had that conversation, it was our car that was stolen.
Yes.
So I'd give you 20% of myself, and then, that's good for 5 people a day, and I'd go home and lived in a converted provincial jail cell, and I would just be burnt out. And I did that for 8 months before someone says, empathize, but don't take on your client's problem.
Easier
and I was.
I know. This is why I think people like you and I and many others are here to teach people about this, because I think the wave of the future is going to be much different than it's been. And people are going to, I've certainly thought that the healthcare system, especially in our country, maybe not yours, but our country, really it's kind of on its knees. We are going to have a massive change. And I think people are going to have to learn to do more about taking care of themselves emotionally, physically, and spiritually, not just in the traditional ways. It isn't just what you eat. It isn't just what you drink or not drink. It's how you think. and it's how you react when you're with other people, talking to other people, whether you know them or not. I used to tell my class, a good way to gauge just how powerful you are with your feelings and how you can affect others around you. Go out and go shopping. Go to a nice crowded mall. Be in the worst mood in your mind you can conjure up. Just be in a really pissy mood. Watch and see how people react.
Mm-hmm.
And they will react to that negativity. Do it for about a half hour, if you can stand it, and then turn it the other way. Walk the other end of the mall. And just be, and it isn't a matter of just eye contact and smiling. If you're in a good mood, it comes off you like a spotlight. And if you're in a terrible mood, it also comes off of you. You know, we just had this sad, terrible shooting in Washington State. I'm sure you've heard about it.
Yes.
This guy walked into Macy's, shot 5 people. I wasn't there. I'm not saying this is really how it should have been, but golly gee, if just one person had empathically picked up on him, maybe, I don't know, but maybe there would have been a different outcome. And people do this. People will walk through and go, that guy doesn't look right to me. And they've told me. I went over and told the security guard. And, of course, everybody's scared to death of being politically incorrect. You know, either the guy was black, white, or purple, and if somebody said something, they were picking on him. But I've had people tell me that they have had people checked out that they had bad feelings about. Maybe lived 2 doors down, nobody hardly ever saw him, but they got bad vibes. Sometimes we have to follow through on that trust.
Oh, yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I could look at, well, a kid, but I was old enough to go into a bar. I could be in a bar and there'd be a crowd of people on the dance floor and people standing around, and I could look at it and know that person A over on the left was going to get in a fight with person B over on the right. Just by the energy they both had. They were completely different from everybody else in the bar.
Well, see, this is what I thought made me a really good nurse, because I'd be taking care of people and I knew stuff about them. And I thought, this is just because I'm people-oriented. But I did. So you were reading people without knowing you were reading people. I just want people to trust that. Because most people, I think, I mean, there's a few out there that are so, you know, wrapped up in themselves. They wouldn't get a message from anybody with ease. But for the most part, I think people pick up on other people if they just pay attention.
Oh, yes.
Most of the time, they don't. And you have to learn how to open those channels, and there's lots of wonderful ways to do it. You know, when I was just after my head injury and living in Minnesota, nobody to talk to about it, and no books that were written at that point in time, I would have given anything in Minnesota, I was there 3 years, to have just had one person I could pick up the phone and go, God, I had this crazy dream and it came true. We have books falling off shelves for you. We have shows on TV. We have movies. I mean, some of it's hype, but a lot of it is based in good stuff. Find a class or a group in your area. Just, you know, even if you begin with basic metaphysics, go to a metaphysical bookstore. They usually have lots of information there. Get something to get you on the path of that assuredness that there are things beyond what we hear, see, feel, taste. We know. And you got to learn to trust it. It could save your life.
Yeah. And I could jump in on there and say, yeah, it saved my life. I still have the bullet that was loaded into the rifle that the guy was aiming at the door waiting for me to knock. And the bullet I keep to remind me that everyone else I worked with would have walked up to the door and knocked on it. And for some bizarre reason, I drove 3 houses down and turned it into a mini training exercise. And I had no information prior to say that it was going to be that much of a
divine intervention.
encounter.
Whatever you believe, it's divine intervention. I
yeah,
never liked people what to believe, but that's universal. That's incredible. My husband was shot. He was shot in Reno. Both he and his partner from 5 feet away. Bad drug dealer at the bus station. And both, of course, my husband lived, and the other guy did too. Bullets bounced off, went through my husband's arm. But he talks about having a bad feeling going in there. You know, it just, and I don't think it has to be people I know I'm sitting listening, well, God, do I have to be shot in order to get it? Or almost shot? Or no. It's just that in heightened fear situations, I think all the senses are just off the Richter scale. And I think that's why when you were alerted and know it, all those senses are just like radar out there. We don't have to be in fearful states all the time to open up these wonderful doors of awareness. It's just that sometimes it begins with that.
No, it's hindsight for me. When in 2012, when it was explained to me, and how I was connected to other energies and spirit guides and things like this. And when the person I was talking to, the spirit medium, actually went through and told me all these things that happened, I kind of looked at her and said, you know, first of all, how do you know that? But
yeah, how are you reading my mail? Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know, or how did I get from point A to point B without getting hurt? And she explained it, and now I relax and open to that side and pay attention to the goosebumps on my left. And if I get them on the left side of my face versus my arm, I pay attention to the moment and try to figure out what was going on that led me up to that.
Well,
I'm getting
most
faster.
People you talk to in those kind of situations will tell you that they had a feeling. They had something that was warning them. It's just that most people don't bother, like you, to stop and take note and to weigh it. But people have incredible stories all the time with that.
You know, I'll see somebody being loaded into an ambulance after a car accident, and they're saying, "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have turned left." You know, well, if you knew you shouldn't have turned left,
then what were you doing?
pay attention to it next time, because right now your car is the size of a mailbox, and you're going to the hospital for a long time. It is interesting, but again, it's hindsight. And if there's more and more people like you, more and more radio programs like this, and that Dave Scott has, more books and more people becoming open, and that it is more acceptable to talk about this at a cocktail party than it was maybe even 10 or 15 years ago.
However, daylight's burning, dear.
Yeah.
We don't have time to fool around. I mean, we've been saying this, because I'm way older than you, kid, but all of us, for the last 30, 40 years, we've been talking this. We've been promoting this. It is moving like quicksand, frankly, compared to what it should be. And I do believe there's been change. I do believe people's hearts have opened and the interest has been there. But I don't know if it's going to be quickly enough for what we need to all be prepared for. And I'm not being a doomsdayer. I'm just saying, look at your world. It's changing. Everybody is lulled into this false sense of security, and this is what I have issues with, the modern-day electronic cell phone texting, blah, blah. We've forgot about personal conversations, personal feelings, picking up energy from the other person talking to them on the phone or being in person. Everything now has been reduced to this little bitty electric magnet or whatever the hell those things are made out of. Excuse me for swearing. You can find me. It's about grasping what really took all these hundreds of years to develop. I've always said the caveman was running around being pretty darn intuitive when he was out there hunting wild things and having craziness. He had to be. Intuition, I think, began as a primitive defense. And then it still was retained, we know, because we had all the witch burnings back in the 1700s. I mean, it was still pretty active. People were reacting to it. It somehow has survived. And yet the resurgence we should have, I think, has got to pick up the pace. And what by that I mean, you don't got to run out and read every ESP book you can get a hold of. Just learn some basics. Listen to your thoughts, just like you said. Listen to know in your mind what's a warning versus just a thought. If you listen to yourself carefully, you can know the difference. But people are going to have to learn, because of the changes coming on the planet, that you're going to have to depend on your intuition. And people do it. When do they do it? They do it in disasters. They do it when the hard line is drawn, when there's no help available. You know, we've been getting disaster control training here for a long time. I took 3 months of it for what's called CERT down here, Certified Emergency Trained Responders. Okay, blah, blah. First thing they teach you there is there's not going to be enough help. Get that. There's not going to be enough medical folk, not enough police, firemen, nothing. This is why we want citizens in here learning this stuff. That's the kind of stuff, and it could be man-made disaster or it could be disaster. People do rally in disasters because they want to live. You shouldn't have to live that way in your normal everyday life. That's not what I mean. But the alertness, once you learn to listen to that part of yourself like you have so well honed in yourself, just listening to not just the voice, but the physical things that happen to you. When that message comes through, that's all people got to do. If you know yourself, you'll be safe. You'll be able to manage. And I would imagine we got some difficult times coming, but I also think it's better times. I think there's not disaster forever, but there's going to be a reshaping of the planet, and I would want people just to be ready for it and not sit and wait for their cell phone or that text.
Yeah.
We can't lose the human touch. Sorry, James, I kind of get going there.
No, you did. You had a good little vent, and you're going to have to put 5 cents in the cussing jar.
Darn. Is that okay? Darn.
Oh shit! Yeah. So what I want to zip back a little bit, and I want to take our listener back to where. Actually, before I go there, I want to say to you that there is an understanding about the rise in the sensitivity, the rise of vibration of so many people now, and the understanding themselves or the global understanding or a little bit of a concession to, yes, people, there are people who are sensitive and people are becoming more sensitive. It's kind of a wave of people saying, well, it's not that something changed to make us all more sensitive or identify this, is that we're being prepared for something.
Right, evolving.
And my divination seems to be identifying other people who are empaths. Mm-hmm. I will go out on a motorcycle ride for 2 weeks, and for some reason I took my cards with me, and I would walk into some place and I'd look at a guy and go, I know this is really weird and it's not a pickup line, buddy, but I'm supposed to read cards for you. And the guy would look at me and say, what's funny? I've been just thinking about having that done.
No. You know what courage that takes on your part? Huge. The courage to put it out there. I was standing, and I probably told you this in the last show I did with you, but I'll mention it because it's good. It takes 3 seconds here. Checkout line Safeway, years before I ever opened an office, but I knew what I was doing was right, and I was standing in checkout line. I knew this lady ahead of me was worried about her son getting his job in New York. I tapped her on the shoulder and told her he would. I thought she was going to have a heart attack. What did I learn from that experience? Well, I learned, I was right. I mean, at least that was verifiable. But I had to be, and not to take away from what you just said, But it's what you do with it. You found a setting that's comfortable for you to do that. Probably you wouldn't approach everybody that way. You felt the vibe was right to tell him.
Yeah.
I should have paid more attention to my vibe about this lady and just said to myself, keep it to yourself. It's not like I was saving somebody's life. I was just wanting to reassure her. I mean, she appreciated it, but it scared the heck out of her.
Yeah.
So I think what people fear, make your point, Laurie, I think what people fear is being exposed and be ridiculed. Gee, I got this funny feeling about you. I've never met you, but do you mind if I tell you? Well, sometimes it is okay. And I've done it, not a lot, even now after all these years. Once in a while, I will do it. If I think
Lori,
it's
I think it's if you say it, it's going to fall on some ears that are accepting because it's meant to be.
Well, you never know where it'll travel. Even if that person takes the message home to their mother and says, God, I met this weird person today who said this to me. And then the mother says, well, how odd, Charles, because I've been thinking the same thing. You should probably have a session reading. You never know where it's going to go. You've just delivered the message. That's all. You deliver the message.
Yep. And I think of it this way, too. Here's a strange guy coming in, and he's got these little witchy cards with him. So he's already put himself out. So if you say, yeah, I'm a little bit sensitive to things, most of these people don't know. But they're also in the service industry now. If you think of, again, jobs that somebody of a high vibration is attracted to, they're service jobs. They're helping jobs. That whether that's a maid, a butler, a waitress. Yeah.
Sure.
And
well, the other piece, go ahead.
And they actually make contact with you. They come up and start talking to you.
Yeah.
And that's when I seem to get that little, I look at them and I just know that I'm supposed to talk to them about this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it is in Canada, but we have pockets of the country here that still carry firewood and a Bic lighter. So there would be obviously certain areas. I took, actually, when I moved to where I took my license plate off my car when it expired because I didn't need it here. I'm not advertising. It said Sierra 1 on it. This is not an area of the country that I would want to advertise that. There are very, very hardcore thinking religious groups here that would have issues. So I think you have to use common sense. I think
I agree totally.
I don't want people to just go, oh, great, they said just go do it. I mean, you just have to be prudent, but have a filter, but don't block it. That's all.
Yeah, there's one of our ladies in the chat room, Sharon Naughton. I hope I'm saying that right, Sharon. You helped her. Her son was murdered years ago. And you actually did a reading for her, and she was very impressed. And she is a person who listens to the show religiously. And she's just saying hi. She's in our chat room right now.
Oh, that touches me. And I appreciate when people, like I said, it's not about me, it's this work. And if people verify credibility and just urge people out there in the radio audience to, just don't shut the whole door on it. Listen to things. People do get marvelous responses out of it. I would like to talk personally to Sharon sometime if she will leave her number or email.
Okay, I actually, we can make that happen.
My website, yeah. You've got my
we'll make that happen.
My landline phone that she can have that number. I'd love to catch up with her.
Sure. Hey, Laurie, I know we've only got last quarter of this hour. Our first hour is gone, and I still do want to get into some of the things that drawed me.
Drawed you.
It drawed me. It drew me to you.
Can't stay up late either.
And it was a television show out of, I think it was one of the Netflix programs, Psychic Investigators.
Yeah.
Back in 2006.
Great people.
Yeah. That was I'm trying to remember which investigation that was. Was that a young lady who went missing on along a cliff in a walking area by the shore? I can't remember.
God, I don't know, dear. I've done so many cases. I filmed for 7 years for them.
Yeah.
And what I want to just say about the Psychic Detective program itself was authenticity. I had lots of offers to televise my work, my cases, and I said, only if you'll stick to the facts. What we did was we reenacted cases precisely. In fact, what I loved is that they did their homework. They would check on the case and go talk to people involved. They did an absolutely marvelous job. It was not Hollywood kind of stuff. They really made it real. And they were very, very mindful of the families and respect. And that was a real stickler for me. I would always call the families first and say, they want to do your show. What do you feel about that? I mean, it was public information. I didn't need to do that. But I did it out of respect. Because I wouldn't want to be watching television and see my poor kid's case on there.
Yeah.
So they were the same. Mindful, respectful, very nice. But I'm trying to think of what case you may be.
Well,
the only one about... Go ahead.
There was Psychic Investigators, and there was Psychic Detectives. And I know one of the Psychic Detective ones, you were looking at the Linda Sobek murder case.
Yep, Linda Sobek, the cheerleader, right?
Yeah, that was in the Angeles National Forest.
Right. Yeah, they were looking for her down in L.A., and I think I told this story on Larry King, is that good friends of hers happened to be people that I knew. The husband and wife. The wife was the best friends with Linda. The husband called me, and I'd worked on his father's missing person case and murder in Oregon. His name is Sean Lucas, and lovely man, whole family, nice people, and I've known them for years. Anyway, they were looking for her in L.A., and I said, no way. She's up in the mountains somewhere. So that's what we began with, and that was just the beginning of cell phones, because I was talking with him on the phone between clients with a map of the forest and had them going up there. Anyway, that's the whole story. They did not find her body because the guy confessed that day. He confessed because they found the paperwork to the Lexus car he had rented. He was a photographer, and he took her up there to use her as a model and murdered her up in Palmdale. But we were going up Highway 10 right out of L.A., and I said, that's the route he took. She's up there. And I'm glad they found her. I'm glad that happened. But they were on their way up. In fact, one of his wife's friends stopped on the roadside and found her makeup bag on Highway 10. And they knew it because it was very distinctive. And within a couple hours, the guy had confessed.
Wow.
That was dramatic, very dramatic. And
well,
I went down and refilmed that, redid it. But they did a nice job with that. And that's, I don't ever like to see families, I never like to see families feel like they have to be exposed to, just the hoopla of, gee, here comes the TV, here comes the folks. They have enough going on. They don't need to be exposed to that. And that's why in the beginning I really didn't want to do cases and television, because I didn't want to put people through pain again. And yet I found that sometimes it was a catharsis for people to talk about even after the event had been resolved.
Yes.
I found a missing man in Bellingham, was just over the border from you guys.
Yeah.
And he was Stephen. God, now I'm spacing his name. I've got his case in the file. Lovely Filipino family. They came all the way down years later down to Seattle to vouch for me in finding their boy. Stephen Pablo, that was his name. And they were just lovely. And I told them, I said, God, I feel terrible for you doing this. And they said, don't. You helped us. So it's a tough field. It's tough for you to be the empath and not be able to walk through the grocery store without knowing stuff. But we're all made of this matter. We are all capable of opening up. And you don't have to open up all the time. I'm sure people are listening or going, who the heck would want to do that all the time? I got enough in my life. That's true. But we're also all here together on the earth plane. And if we could just have a scintilla, just a hint of feeling something from another person that's genuine, we might have a more peaceful world.
One of the questions that came in from the chat room earlier was related to a case that where a boy went missing from school. Are you somewhat familiar with that?
About it. I know it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't. All I can say is I can't talk about it, and you probably know why.
Okay.
I would love to, but I can't.
But I exactly know why. As a policeman, that's called a clue. And we stop asking questions at that point.
Yeah.
And this is the point where if you could see me, listener, I'm winking at you and making a... hey, do you know... I've got a question from Sharon, actually. Do psychics, can they testify in court now? I know there was a case down in Louisiana where the psychic was in California and it was on the phone and said, hey, you guys, you're looking for your brother. Hop in the car now and drive to such and such a place.
Yeah. You know, I think it depends on the judge and the jury.
And the state,
I personally, and people have asked, as soon as I start a case, first of all, what I tell people is I guarantee nothing except that I will give you 100% of who I am and what I can do. The other thing is I tell people, this is not a given that you can take my information to the courts. Even the police. I said, sometimes you'll have an open door, sometimes you'll have a shut door. I don't know as I would feel comfortable going into court as a psychic. I think I would go in and give information if queried, but it's not common down here in the States. In fact, the biggest thing that's happened, and I'm sure you've heard of this, is that, sometimes people have come forward and said, gee, I know where the body's at, and then they end up getting arrested, and they're not even the murderer, they're the psychic.
That was a...
So you got to watch it a little.
I had a conversation, and was it Mary Ellen Rodriguez or somebody? They said, the sheriff called him up and said, if you ever come to Texas, I'm going to arrest you, because she knew the car was in the pond or something.
Oh,
and
yeah.
how would you know
and
that?
They don't want to look bad. Sometimes that kind of thing. I mean, I'm never in the field to one up the police. In fact, I have always been respectful, even before I married my police husband 30 years ago. They work hard, and they get a bad rap sometimes. And sometimes I talk with families that are just so frustrated because they don't get more from the police. Sometimes the police can't give you more because either it's not there or they can't at that moment talk about it. And so I will give them the perspective of being married to a policeman, getting firsthand knowledge of some of that, which I love. That's what I think always drew us together, is my fascination with cases and my basic respect for anybody in law enforcement. Who the heck else would get up every day and be willing to know that could be their last day? Not everybody goes to work thinking that.
Okay. It is one of those gifts you have, and that you actually have to kind of get up in the morning and get prepared to do it with the help of all those little things behind you. And I'd like to get into more about, what directs you into things like that. And we're coming up to our top of the hour break here in a couple of minutes, and I just wanted to remind our listeners we are speaking to Laurie McQuary, a wonderful psychic. Laurie, what's your website? Is that lauriemcquary.com? Is that the one?
www.laurie, Laurie, McQuary, McQuary @msn.com. And then that also links to my email. And there's 2 phone numbers on there that, actually there's 1 phone number that's a landline, this one that we're talking on. The other one is just I'd use for sessions, but they can call me on this one if you give this out as a number. And I will, answer calls. If you're calling from Canada, of course, sometimes it's a little more difficult. Emailing would probably be better.
Yeah.
Or call, we'll work it out.
We'll get it figured out.
Yes, always can.
Excellent. And that lady, the psychic that ended up going to court in Louisiana. Louisiana,
that's kind of a scary place. Louisiana
was Rosemary Kerr, and that was back in the 80s. It was 88 that actually went to court.
Good for her.
Yeah, she had a call from the family, a member of the family in California. And anyway, we'll come back with more from Laurie McQuary on Spaced Out Weekend right after these messages from Scott.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's Cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Weekend. Tonight with us is psychic detective, psychic investigator, Miss Laurie McQuary. Laurie has been doing this for a great while. She says she's really old, and no, she's not really old. But while I have your attention, listener, I got to remind you that if you are a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club, that's the secret private special club at spacedoutradio.com. Our friend Galen Chauncey of the Ghost Hunters of Virginia is taking her team down to the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Jim, not Sanitarium, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky in March and April. We haven't got a confirmed date yet, but if you are interested and you can make it down to that part of Kentucky in the spring for $75, you don't have to hang out with a bunch of wannabe ghost hunters. You can actually go with a team with all the cool gear. And Galen and the Ghost Hunters of Virginia are accepting 2 of you to go with them and hang out. And they've been in there a couple of times before. They know who to talk to on what floor, and you'll have the experience of a lifetime. Again, if you go and join the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com, it's going to cost you about $5 a month. And with that, you get a chance at things like this. And we're going to be putting up basically ghost-alongs or ride-alongs with paranormal groups all over the U.S. and Canada and your area, if you like. And we have a number of books that Dave and I give out that are written by our guests. Again, go to spacedoutradio.com and join the Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers Club as soon as your little feet can get there. Laurie, before the break, we were talking about, things that... I was going to say psychopaths
that
too.
go bump in the night? No, not
Things
quite.
that go bump in the night. Yeah, it was. We were talking about Rosemary Kerr, the psychic who actually stood as a witness in a murder trial in down Louisiana, and the reason being was a friend of the family's in California knew who she was, got a hold of Rosemary. Rosemary phoned the Daigle family. And all she said was, you need to get in your car and drive north or south on the highway. And I get that you have to do that. So they did that. And as they're driving, they actually see their missing brother's truck with 2 strangers in it and follow it and follow it along dark road. They all kind of, 3 of their vehicles pull up while this truck has now done a U-turn facing them. And they've gone all along this dark road and didn't see any other cars. Well, the truck takes off the other direction to go back where they came. And out of the blue, there happened to be a police car there that got into a chase with it, caught them, and eventually they found that where they had killed the brother. These guys
this
were...
is what I think your future police departments will have. We'll have working intuitives. And that's how it should be. You know, I used to love, the Space Trek series that had the intuitive on board, Captain Picard.
Picard, yeah. What was her name? Yeah.
I can't think of it, but I remember how clear it was that she was an intuitive, and she wasn't weird. She didn't carry a crystal ball. She just was there doing it.
Called her an empath.
Yes. So that's what you're going to see eventually, I think. It's coming, but it's just been slow. Takes a while.
It's it will be interesting if that ever happens. Then because I know that as empaths, like a lot of the guys who do the interview interrogation, the interrogation part of it is, a Canadian interrogation is keeping the bacon away from the bad guy. No, look at this bacon. No, you can't have it. That's it's cruel and inhuman, but. As an empath going into an interrogation or an interview, a hard interview, that person's energy is very, very low at that point, very defensive, very tight. And you come in with very high energy, and you can feel them relaxing.
Yeah.
And you just talk to them gently and fine, and everything's going to be okay, and they'll tell you anything at that point.
Yeah, I know.
Looking
I listened
back
to my
on it.
husband's stuff that he did as a detective for all the years he was doing, and I just loved how he could read people. And before he met me, he didn't talk too much about that kind of stuff, but you guys have to do it. And you know how to talk to the person, whatever way they need to be encouraged or guided, so to speak, even if they're the bad guy. You guys are wonderful at it.
Well, thank you.
Well, you are. I never met a policeman I didn't like.
Oh, you.
Even the
I have.
Even the ones that might have been a little, difficult. I understood where they were coming from, and I was very embarrassed here. If I can relate the short story, I was filming here in Oregon, and it was about a missing person, and I've been working on this case now a couple of years. Some people aren't always found immediately, even with a psychic. And the Japanese people came over, wanted to film, jumped on the fact that I had a case that they could film me on. That was fine. I had no problem with that. They never asked me. They went to the sheriff's department in this area without asking me and asked him if we could film with a search crew, if we could go out and do all this stuff on camera. And then they came and told me, well, the sheriff okayed it. I met with him. He was great. I said, please, no, I'm not doing this for the hoopla. This was all put together behind my back. But I said, however, even though this is being filmed and taken to Japan, that energy is still here about it's being made newsworthy. And I was embarrassed because they spent 2 hours looking in areas that I felt strongly about, but I said, it's not just right here under the rock. They didn't find a person at that time. And one of the sheriffs who was there, aside from the one that I had met, was pretty rigid about it. And I thanked him for his time, and I said, I'm sorry this didn't turn out the way we had hoped. And he said, whatever. And it was real clear how disgusted he was. I felt bad, but I wasn't the one who said, let's do it today, take the search team out. It was just the television folk wanted to film a case, and I didn't know they were going to go to that length. And I felt bad. And I apologized to the family on the site, and they were fine with it. I said, please, no, this is just a circus. I said, I did not set this up. So, word to me, word to the wise, you have to be careful with the media. They're there to do a job. I don't care what country they're from.
Yeah, and don't get me started on those guys.
You know how police feel about the media a lot of times. They're not always real welcoming for good reason. And I've known some fine media people. I have many people in Portland, anchors and TV, that I just love. They're great people. But, once in a while, there's an apple that's not so good.
Oh, yeah. You get your boss as a peace officer sending you out to do something and throwing you in front of the media. I know back in 1978 in Newfoundland, up here in Canada, there was a UFO appeared in a place called Clarenville, Newfoundland. And not only half the town saw it, but the local constable saw it. So, of course, all the media converges on the town, and they go to the sergeant in charge of this small Mountie detachment, and the constable, Jim Blackwood, is the kid who saw it. And he says, yeah, the media's here. They want to talk to me. And the sergeant said, so go talk to them. Tell them what you saw.
Wow.
So the poor guy's up there. He's probably got about 8 months on the job, and he's talking to the media about a UFO he saw.
Yeah,
that would have been I've never been put in that.
I believe in him. I was followed by one, and it was an eerie experience.
Now, Laurie, when you say you were followed by one, kind of go into that. What do you mean?
I will, and I haven't told many people about this, so now I'm about to tell a lot of people. But no, this is not I don't deal with this in my work, but I've always believed in it. I was living over in the Lake Oswego area of Portland, which is south of Portland. And like Portland, we have a lot of wooded areas. We have places where, you think you're in town, and really you're about 3 or 4 miles, and it looks like you're in the middle of nowhere. I was taking the back road home from Portland back to Lake Oswego. We have a Tryon Creek area, it's called. Very long wooded area. There's not much there. Back road. This was back in early 80s. And it was quite dark. There was very little street lights. This is pretty rural. And I was just driving along, trying to get home, and I looked towards, of course, out the front of my car as I was driving, and I could see a white light shining down. And I thought, this is weird. Where did this come from? And this light got wider and bigger, and at first I thought, oh, my God, could it be a helicopter? What is it doing at this level of elevation? We're at housing level. Although the houses weren't close to me, they were up on the hills a little bit, because this is like through a wooded area. This light was over my car. I rolled my window down, did not want to stop because it scared me. I was out on a back road, pitch black, and here's this white light over my car. I slowed down enough to listen for the whir of any motor. There was none. There was none. And this light followed me all the way through. It's about 3 or 4 miles till you get to where Lake Oswego is. And then it disappeared. I have no doubt in my mind what it was. It was not an aircraft. And it wasn't somebody in a balloon, because they'd have to keep up with me.
That is weird.
Leveled right over my car, and I would say it was probably, whatever it was no more than about 20 feet up above my car, following me all the way down the road.
You didn't lose any time or anything like that?
Not that I know of. I mean, I just wanted to get home to my kids. I was scared. You know, at first I thought it was just some yo-ho out there playing games or something with lights, but it didn't take me very long, and I just thought, I think I've got a UFO. That's what I think. And maybe they were bored that night, and they didn't have anything else better to do. No,
well,
that's my UFO story, but I believe it.
You've got other sensitives incredible sensitives that have had encounters. You've got Elizabeth Anglin, who was on in our first hour, a sensitive, a psychic who was an abductee. She lost 10 hours of time. I interviewed Akiane Krameric, the young woman, the beautiful artist, who was said to channel, pictures of Christ and things as a very, very young age. I think I'm the first one who actually spoke to her about her experiences with what she called interdimensional light beings, and that she herself lost 10 hours of time, and the police were called, and she just appeared in the hallway behind her mother, while talking to the police, and they looked at her like, well, where have you been? She said, I was just in my bedroom. No, you've been gone for 10 hours. But I wonder if it's a sensitive person like yourself kind of glows in the dark. Your vibration is that high that you kind of set yourself apart from others.
Oh, that could be. Of course, we all have the auras. I don't know. I never questioned it, James. I've always thought it's probably a good thing not to try to think this stuff out too hard. People over-clarify. People want to have over-explanations sometimes. Those are the ones that are pretty left-brain psychic. Not psychic, but skeptics. And I just, aside from slowing down, seeing if I could hear a motor, I did not want to stop on that dark highway and get out of my car. I didn't think that was a safe thing to do. And
that would be one of those, the hairs in the back of your neck go up and you kind of go, okay, I'm paying attention to that.
Yeah. Well, I think something just said, don't get out of the car. I said, don't worry, I don't plan on it. No, I just always accept it. Like I said, I think I've told my son about it because he's very, very psychic, a wonderful man. And I shared that with him. But I can't even think of, aside from you now and your audience, it's been years and I've never talked about it because I think for me it was a personal experience. It wasn't anything so astounding that, oh my God, I got to tell somebody and run down and, talk to the police about it or something. And then for years, I always, and this sounds silly, I know, but for years, even my husband and I would laugh about it. And he believes, I love that, he watches all these alien shows, that aliens have come down and there's evidence, and I watch them too, I think they're great. I always used to say, please bring a UFO to me. Please bring the experience. I'm waiting. And I would be envious when in the Inquirer magazine it would be some guy down in Albuquerque, New Mexico who doesn't believe in this stuff, but he saw one. And I think that's unfair. I believe. I want to see. But maybe the point is the non-believers need to see.
Yeah.
It isn't specially reserved for us, James. I know it should be, but it's not. I think the folks who go, and then they go, holy cow, what was that? Good. They need to be shook up.
I've got a girl in my paranormal a woman who's in my paranormal group, she said, I think there's a ghost or something in my place, because I find myself laying on top of the bed, and the bed's perfectly neatly, almost like it's ironed. And we went to her place, and there's nothing here. And I said, have you ever seen like UFOs? And she looked at me and said, well, I was in the backyard once, and this thing, monstrous shaped, V-shaped thing came over her house completely silent, and she was the only one who could see it. I said, yeah, you're more likely being abducted at night kind of thing, or taken and brought back and just laid on top of the bed.
Yeah.
And there was some other things that we kind of confirmed that later, but it was very interesting. Laurie, you met your husband while working on a missing person case, and he was a homicide detective at the time. Is that, and did you get called a lot by police, or did this information come to you, and then you kind of approached the police saying, I'm getting this?
Yeah, no. No. People ask me all the time who get these hits. What do I do? Do I go down to the police station? I said, gosh, be careful, because they might just think you're another nutcase. No, I never wanted to run to the police. The very first time I ever had an association with that is I had a client whose husband was a detective in Portland. She and I became friends. She and I started talking about cases over the phone as they happened in the news. She would relate to him things I'd say about certain cases, and within about 6 months of our being friends, he called me, said, I want you to come down and talk to us. That was the very first one I worked on. And I did. I went down to Portland PD, talked with this gentleman, who later became the police chief years later. He was very open, drove me around to parts of Portland, and stopped in front of a house, and he said, tell me about whoever lives here. And I told him. I described people. And, cops don't tell you much. They don't give it away, as you know. So I didn't know whether I was right, wrong, or indifferent. I hoped it fit. Found out later it was very accurate. That was the beginning. But I had that connection, and then I also, at the time, I was not married to my detective husband now, but I was dating a man whose brother was a detective in another part of Portland. And so after being with this gentleman for a while, I saw his brother all the time. And we talked about cases, and that's how I began to have a connection with law enforcement in Portland and outlying areas. The case I met my husband on, it came through the family. And this happens a lot. Families will say, I'm going to tell the police what you've said, and ask them to call you. And I always say, please, I'm willing to talk to police, but please don't expect them to jump on the wagon. They may not want to. Well, Bob called. This is my husband now. I had worked with this family on their missing daughter's case. He called me, and he said, he said, this is Detective Lee, and I thought I'd take you to lunch and check you out. James, that was not the way to approach it. I was not pleased. I had one of those weeks where it was pretty much prove it to me. And I said, I'll just send you a brochure. Even though this was my family's detective, I just thought, I don't think I'm going to be able to make much headway with this person. Well, he got very, very quickly very warm and nice, and he said, no, really, I'd like to take you to lunch. Okay, took me to lunch, across the street, nice restaurant, upper balcony outside. There's a point to the story. Maybe I told you this before, but I'll just make it quick. Gave him 30 facts on his case. 30 facts on his case. He wrote every one of them down. A year and a half later, 29 of them came out totally correct, including where the body was buried. I walked back from that lunch with him that June day on June 3rd, and we do celebrate 2 anniversaries. We celebrate June 3rd, the day we met, and we celebrate December 6th, the day we married, which was a year and a half later. Come back to my nice office, walked in. My secretary, who never claimed to be psychic, and the therapist who was there with me, both of them saw him walk me to the door, leave, and they both said at the same time, that's the man you're going to marry. I had not been married for years. I was not looking. I thought he was
Wow.
cute. I got over him being a little rude in the beginning. But that's all it... And listen, where did these people get that, these two ladies? How could they possibly know that? They were right on. So your question about, it's like I told Larry King. I said, I don't ambulance chase. I feel that cases come to me are the ones I'm supposed to work on. And I don't accept every case. I can't. There's too many that come. So I look at the basics of a case, and my parameters are I do not accept requests from anyone other than family members or law enforcement. Now, sometimes somebody from a family will say, this is my best friend, the family has given permission. I'll say, fine, I need that permission. If you want to be the spokesperson, that's fine. But I'd rather work with family members or the police because they have the facts that I want to verify. When I give an impression of something about the missing person, the best friend of the family may not know. The family will know usually, or the cops know. So that's the parameter, and I don't accept every case. I accept a case if I think I can make a difference.
You also, when it comes to police and working with law enforcement, you don't ask a fee for that, do you?
Not for the police, I don't. James, for 21 years, I did not charge for cases, period. And then, like I tell people, then I started doing television. When I went on Larry King, I became just overwhelmed with cases from around the world. That's international program. I was doing cases till midnight at home. So I try to make it just as reasonable as I can, and it is not a huge fee. I know psychics that charge $5,000 a case. Mine's $300, and part of that is put in a fund for people who can't afford to pay. Then I'll give them the case, and it's also to cover my expenses if I travel.
Yeah.
But I had an office for over 33 years that I had to pay on. And
Oh, yeah, you've got overhead. You have to...
you got overhead. People used to think I was just sitting at home knitting. No, I wasn't. I had an office from 1983 up until just last year. And $1,400 a month rent adds up. And I had a secretary up until 3 years prior. And then I just knew I was phasing out because my husband was retiring and I'd be leaving the office. So I just did it on my own without a secretary. So,
Laurie, if I take me through what type of information you would require. If I come to you and say, this is my cousin Billy has gone missing, and here's a picture. This is the last time he was seen. The police don't know where he is, etc.
I don't want too much information from you.
Yeah.
All I want is a name, a birth date, photo, and an area where this person was last seen. And then what I would do, let's just say you were James calling me from Canada, asking me for this. I would say, this is how we'll begin. And I will look at that photo and birth date, and then I will tell you if I think I can make a difference, if I can help find this person. And I will give you at least some characteristics about your cousin. What is the word?
Characteristics?
Personality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I will tell you to confirm for you. Your husband liked to fly fish, or your cousin liked to fly fish. He had a white dog. He fell off a tree limb and broke his arm at age 10. Okay, that all may seem superfluous, but it's confirming. Because if I'm getting information that's very personal, then I'm getting something.
I hate to interrupt you. You just described my dad.
Oh, God, are you kidding? Are you kidding?
Nope.
Oh, my God.
Liked to fly fish. Had a white dog.
What's his name?
Keith.
Keith?
Keith.
Keith. Ah. Was he a hidden artist? Did he have an artistic heart?
He probably had an artistic heart. My mom was kind of more artsy too, but my dad, his handwriting was like art. It was amazing.
But look at him drawn to the woman to be his wife, and she's artistic. He has an artistic heart. He's probably one of these people that said, well, I wish I could draw the picture. I'd love to, but I'll admire the people who can.
Yeah.
Misses you a lot. You said he grabbed your collar there at work. Yes, I'm sure he does a lot of things to try and get your attention. He had a good sense of humor, did he not?
A very dry sense of humor.
Okay, I love dry sense of humor.
Almost, yeah. It was a little quirky.
Yeah, well, that's okay. He thought he had a funny sense of humor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He probably wondered why the rest of the world didn't get it. Sorry.
We all cringe when he'd say something, and you go, "Okay, that was sort of funny. You should have kept it to yourself." Oh. Yeah, good guy. Anyway, that was I hate to interrupt you, but it just freaked me out.
No, I'm glad you did. Wow, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so you get the information once you've gone through the characteristics, and the person says, "Yes, this is the person." The person, basically, are they confirming for you that the person that is coming through to you is the right one?
Well, I suppose that is a reasonable question. I always assume it is. I trust that source. And I think what's even more important than that, before I even start working with a family, I think it's real important that we come to real agreement about whether they feel their loved one is alive or not. That's a hard one. But I don't want to start a case and have people going, we think he's fine, he's just hanging out, he's just not coming home. And I'm thinking, gee, buried 3 feet deep in the woods. What will be at, counterproduction here. So I always gently try to get the family to understand if my first impression is that this person may not be all right, then that's the one I'm going to probably go with. And it's not that I would want to stamp hope out. I could be wrong, of course. But I have found more often than not that it has been correct when I have just that heavy feeling in my chest when I look at someone's photo, whether they're alive or not.
Yeah.
I know the one case I just told you about, Stephen Pablo, his sister is the one who called me in my office as a result of a TV show that I had done in Seattle. And she said, he's been spotted. He disappeared in January. He had been spotted supposedly in February. I said, I think he's gone. And I said, this is where I think he is, Whatcom Falls, right in the middle of Bellingham. And I said, there's a big falls there. I'd never been there. She sent me a map. I said, he lived a half a mile from the falls. I said, you're going to find something of his behind the falls. It's a bag of some kind. It was his knapsack. And I told her, I said, please, he's 200 yards downstream. Don't go. Don't go. And she did. She found him. 65 searchers had gone through that park with dogs, James. 65. This poor kid had run off in the middle of the night. When he was 12, he'd been hit by a car, steel plate put in his head, had nothing but problems since. He was only in his mid-20s when this happened. He was delusional. He had problems. He ran off into the park. Mother tried to get him to come in the house. He wouldn't come in. The family doctor said, bring him into the office in the morning. Idiot. They'd done something and gotten police out there. He might be alive. Anyway, he ran delusional into the park, tripped, fell under this big footbridge, and it's a good-sized footbridge, about 20 feet high, maybe not quite 20 feet, it was probably about 12 feet high, because I know I flew up there later to videotape with the family what happened. And he got caught in this raging, icy water that came down, hit his head, and he lay stuck under leaves and stuff underneath this bridge. It was sad. But I knew he was gone. I knew it.
Oh, wow.
The family who came to Linwood, where I filmed live for Como TV, to talk about that happening. And they've always been gracious and wonderful. I told them I was going to write a book about 10 of the most interesting cases I worked on, and I asked permission to use their case. And they told me absolutely. That's the kind of wonderful ties I like to make with families. I try to never forget a family that I've worked with. In fact, I still call people that years ago we worked on cases, and I've had over 800 cases in my files, James. Not all solved, just cases I've worked on. I've kept them all until I moved to where I am now, and I had to just go through a lot of them that were old and they were no longer relevant. But they all have meaning to me. And I used to try to call every family I worked with at least once a year and check on them, even if the case was at a standstill. I wanted them to know I hadn't forgotten.
Yeah. We have a missing person in my area. Been missing a couple of years ago. I think it was about this time of year. A fellow with Alzheimer's, and I kept getting that he was in water where the bushes came down, like these creeks where they kind of overgrow on the side. So there's a canopy.
Yeah.
And I happened to tell the superintendent actually she was an inspector at the time. This is where I said, you guys should really go look there. I got a feeling that's where you're going to find him. And she just looked at me and stared at me and said, well, the searchers have been all through that area. Well,
yes.
I didn't even explain the area that well. So I don't know what she was thinking of, but I'm still, I'm at a point now where I've moved away from that. I don't know if you've ever done that where you had information, you had a thought, and it's like, well, it's not my place to bring that information forward at this time.
Agreed. Sometimes it's not. I know. And it's hard because you feel like you're holding it, and it's heavy. And if you don't do something, nothing will change. But that's not necessarily true. You may be the point man here. Even if, let's just hypotheses for a moment and say, okay, this poor gentleman, is it a man, disappeared. Yeah. What if 3-4 months from now they find him in that exact spot, and that supervisor you talked to says, oh my gosh, that's where James said. You've made an inroad there to belief. And of course, it's so funny to me when I've sat with detectives many times and done what I call just sort of the fact findings, victimization is what I call, just sort of the list of what the victim was like, and give them all these wonderful personal anecdotes and things about the person. And at the end, the cop goes, yeah, we know all that, but where's the body? Sometimes they don't want all the fill-in.
It's unfortunate because that's what the family wants.
Yes, of course they do. But, when I start, I like to give people what I hope is just confirmation of their loved one. So they know that's who I'm talking about. Their person, no one else. And it's hard work. You know that. It's hard work.
Here's something that's it sounds a little odd, and I hope my listener kind of keeps up with this. But in the case of this gentleman with Alzheimer's who's walked away, I honestly believe there's a reason that he's not found yet. If he was found past 3 days later, the family would have dealt with that and moved on. Because he hasn't been found for 2 years, his son has created a website, has worked diligently to raise awareness for Alzheimer's disease and to start something in British Columbia here called the Silver Alert, which you have a lot in the U.S. Florida has it. It's missing seniors. Right. If it wasn't for his father being gone for so long, all this wouldn't have happened at the time it did.
Right. I agree.
So,
I know that.
Yeah, you can see where I'm going with this.
Sure.
A lot of good has come out of the father not being found in the 3 years that he's been missing.
That's why I tell families, people are found when they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I don't want to jump right in and go, absolutely, we'll get this done and I'll have your loved one back home in a week. That would be silly. I can only work with what I'm given. That's what I tell them. And most families, that I've worked with, there's a few exceptions, but most families I work with, and right now I'm working about 10 cases. That's about my maximum. I will also not take more cases until I've reduced that load a bit. But once I'm confirmed with them with the case, I am working on that case until it is resolved. And there's never another charge than that initial charge. That includes emails, phone calls, whatever it takes. Something new comes up the family wants to talk about, I'm there. That's why I keep myself to no more than about 8 to 9, 10 cases at a time over about a 6-month period or more. But I think it's important that people understand that we're not magicians. The cops aren't, psychics aren't. And if the information given to that lady in Louisiana was so perfectly timed, then, and it happened that way exactly, it was time. It was just time. And there is a timing to everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
How many, I guess it's hard to count over the last 35 years, or 40 years, you've worked on a lot of homicides. What is the hardest part of working? Let's start it off. If it's a missing person, it turns into a homicide. Is the hardest part dealing with the family, or like I see 3 challenges? There's the family, there's the law enforcement, and then there's the deciphering of information you're getting. Where do you spend, in hindsight, where do you find you spend most of your energy?
Family.
Okay.
When family, and they do this, and I understand their frustration, they will get on the police if they haven't called me. You got to call her. You got to call her. I'm not comfortable with that. But pretty much cops are up front with me, and they'll go, the family wants me to call. I get the message right there. If he's really interested and he's open, he won't say that. So I can deal with that because that's an objectivity. That's a person working on the case in his way. Families, I know, get upset. They get frustrated. I have one case now that I've been working for the last couple of years. Guy in California disappeared. And the family has just been distraught because they live in an absolute different part of the state, but they're in California. But they've had frustrated sort of communication, and they absolutely insisted that this investigator call me. He did once, and it was very cursory. It's fine. I gave him what I had. In fact, what I did was I even made a CD recording and mailed it to him. No, I didn't either. My husband sent him an email recording of it. See, I'm out of the link here. I don't think about internet stuff. He was mailed an email of the session I had made with the family initially about what I thought had happened to this gentleman. I did send him a map in the mail marking the area, and this is huge country. This is not a downtown street in San Francisco. This is Northern California. And I guess, he has other cases, and they get frustrated. This is an elderly couple. Their son's been missing now 4 years. I just picked up the case a year ago. So he called finally again here about 3 months ago and told me, he said, I am trying to meet the family's needs, and also, not that I don't believe in what you do, but I need things to be more exact. In other words, give me the name, address, and telephone number of the bad guy and where the body's at. Sometimes I can't always do that.
Yeah,
and
kidding.
I you don't want it to sound like you're looking for an exit to get out of, but it's true. Even policemen cannot go into a case. They may tell the family, I'm on this and I will stay on it till it's solved, but they can't guarantee anything. And that's because I think the universe works in its own way. When you ask about difficult cases, I had to stop doing cases of children under 18. I can't. It just is too hard, in particular when there's abuse involved. And in fact, you know the John Bonet case.
Yeah.
You should know it, right? Well, I
Oh,
will
yeah.
tell you. I will tell you, now that they've stirred it all up again, the first thing I said when I saw that case on television, I didn't even know who was in the family. I just looked at it, and I told my secretary at the time, I said, the brother did it. Well, interesting. All these years, what is it, 14 years now, something?
Mm-hmm.
They got the brother on television on the Dr. Phil show, smiling inappropriately through the whole thing. I mean, you wouldn't have to be a psychologist to figure out there's something on with this kid. I always thought it had been an accidental death, and I always thought that the mother had covered up everything and made it look like a murder, and that this family had absolutely panicked because they'd already lost a child that night, and they were protecting. The brother was only 9, but she was 6. She was a tiny 6. And I think they had an argument. You know, she was the one who got all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
All the attention. And here's the brother kind of stuck in the background. That was, so I don't know, after, probably easily, I would say, probably 8, 9 years ago, I just said, the last case I did with a little kid was a little boy who had been dropped off by his parents. This was back east somewhere in the country. Both parents worked, dropped him off at not a daycare center, but some farm where the farmer was there, and the wife went off to town, left her alcoholic farmer husband to watch this kid. And supposedly the kid fell and wasn't watched and, cracked his skull open and died. It was just terrible. And I can't do kid stuff. It just, not that I don't care, I do, but it's too hard on me.
Yes. And
with an adult goes missing, it's an adult. They've made choices usually. Even if it was the choice, I think I'll go out and go running. It's 5 a.m. Sorry, I don't think women should do that. I think they're asking for problems. We had a terrible case in Montana just a couple of years ago. Lovely, lovely school teacher went out running at 6 a.m. Broad daylight, 6 a.m. Of course, she's out in rural Montana. These 2 idiots picked her up and murdered her and did other things. But when it's an adult, they at least have the coping skills, usually, to make a decision. Kids don't have decision-making processes. And it's just tragic. Just tragic. So those are the hard ones for me.
Yeah. It's...
And in order to do a better job, I can't do it. That's the ones that would keep me awake at night. I would be thinking of my grandkids.
It's funny you say that, because when I was, luckily enough, when I was working like in a police car, like with a uniform and things like that, which was about 9 years out of my 28 years, I had attended a lot of very bad car accidents where children had passed, but I didn't have any kids.
Yeah.
And got a wolf howling in the back here. So I didn't take it home with me, if you know what I mean. It's a little different now, and I just about applied to go into a homicide unit, and I was talking to the boss and of the unit. He said, "Jim, you probably don't want to go into that, because honestly, it's not all gang members who are healthy 20-somethings or 30-somethings. You're going to deal with, you are going to deal with shaken babies, and you are going to deal with the murder of children." And I said, "Oh, here's my application going into the shredder, because don't want to deal with that. That's not the energy I want to have taken home with me."
It's bad enough hearing it on the news. And, I like to think, I'm not the only psychic in the world. There's going to be people out there who can take those cases and will help.
Yeah.
And the people will find them. They will be led to them.
If they're supposed to go to them, they'll find them.
And that's not to minimize at all when I work with parents who have grown children who have been murdered. It's a palpable thing. and I do feel it because I am a parent. I understand that. But it's so visceral when it's now a child before me that is missing, and it's just different.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah, I get a lot of. I still have that. I'm riding a wave, I should say, of energy that says this is what is supposed to happen, and I see the energy, the soul, the being of a child taken. It's still supposed to happen that way.
Yes.
Or am I am I looking at it too much as a fatalist?
I think it's part of an answer for people. I mean, I don't say this to every family that, is going through this, but I think it. I believe in reincarnation, and I'm not preaching religion here. I'm just believing a belief system. And I like to think that we all get another chance or two or more. That's a wonderful thought, and it's been well, written about and documented and lived in many countries as a real belief system. But if we really go along that line of thought and add to it that every soul chooses its life, and if that soul comes in and leaves early, and everybody, of course, feels it's early, but, I mean, really early, whether it's a car accident, whether it's an illness, the way I learned to deal with coping skills with that as a nurse was to say it was this person's time. There was a reason for this. And the soul came in for just this short period of time, sometimes to teach others. If you were talking before about connecting dots, perhaps a child going, or just a person leaving early under murder or missing circumstances, brings that thread of awareness through psychic ability, through intuitive processes, to people who never would have even thought about it before. Then I guess, it's being evolved. I don't know, all the answers. You don't know them all. I guess we know when we leave here. And it must be darn nice wherever we go because people don't come back except to visit. So,
sometimes.
When you have your own losses, yep, it's a lot harder to give yourself that pep talk. But I've had a lot of loss in my life, and my son was 7 when he had heart surgery, and we went through it alone. I didn't know if I was going to have him or not. The night before his surgery, you know what he said to me? Mom, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. Age 7. I had never talked to him about any of this stuff. This kid was born this way. I sat and cried, and I was the one who's supposed to be comforting him. Of course he made it. Today he's a wonderful martial arts instructor. He's known worldwide, Scott McQuary.
Oh.
Very spiritual, very psychic, very wonderful man. I couldn't be blessed with a finer son. And he lives the stuff. He lives it. A lot of people talk about it. He lives it. So this was his role, to be here. I take nothing for granted, myself included. If people go, well, God, do you know when you're going to die? No. I probably won't be given a special invitation either. I mean, if I pay attention, I might get a warning sign. But I live in the moment. I don't worry about it. I'm 75. I am old, James.
Oh, shoot, you're old. Yeah.
But, it's okay. I'm here as long as I'm supposed to be. And I think I told you my tudes before. And one of them was, remember, I told you my meditation tudes, and I think I said them to you. Just said, let me keep doing what I'm doing as long as I can, as well as I can. That's one of the first of them, aptitude. And I say it every day. And I don't live any precise religious way at all. I live a spiritual way. And I honor native belief systems, which honor the earth. For goodness sake, look what we're doing to the earth. Mother Earth is tired. She's beat. we better be paying attention to global warming. We better be paying attention to the stuff that sustains us, because we sure as heck are getting rid of it all.
Yeah.
That's what I say prayers about. Please. I don't know how your drinking water is in Canada, but it's getting pretty scary down here. I'm glad that I live where I live, and I have well water, and it's from mountains. I think it's safe. I hope so. I worry about the folks that don't have it.
Which mountain is it coming from?
We're in this circle of mountains, Mount Hood, and
Okay.
I don't know, it's artesian
Mount Hood's
water.
good.
It's up
It's
here in
artesian well.
Central Oregon. I think it's pretty good, and we're
Yeah.
pretty rural, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to move here. We bought this property 22 years ago, and my husband listened to me. I said, this place will be safe. I said, wait till you see anarchy. It will happen, and volcanic explosions, stuff.
Well, you're in the Ring of Fire, so
I know it.
We've had
I look
Mount
out
St.
my
Helens
window and I
already.
can see Mount Hood, James. And
Yeah.
all I say is, you know what, God, thanks very much. I'll have a front row seat if it goes off. I'm not worried.
Yeah,
I'm not worried.
no kidding.
You're where you're supposed to be when it's supposed to be. I don't worry about it. Not at all. But I do.
Shar was asking, do you still have the horses? Like you took a fall off a horse when you were younger?
Oh, God, no. I kind of got that message real clear years ago. I mean, even after that horse injury, I did try riding a few more times. No, it didn't work out. But I have horses. My house is all pretty much themed Native American, and I've always honored the horse for what it brought me. So I have a lot of statues of horses. Where I live in this area, I can see horses all I want, but I've never rode again. Loved them like crazy when I was young, but so now I just have some very wonderful, nice statues to remind me of their energy.
And some kind of a little kink in your neck every so often to remind you of the accident. Hey, before I let you go, which is in 1 minute,
okay.
Where do you see your country in 2017?
Well, I don't think we're going to be doing real well economically. And it's not just me saying it. You can read any of the financial advisors, analysts online. And I read them just because I like to see what they're saying. The Harry Dent report is pretty interesting if anybody wants to pick up on that. And that's like D-E-N-T, Dent.
Okay.
I think we're in for a real crash.
I'm going to cut you off now. I'm sorry. I want to thank you, Laurie, for coming on.
It was delightful, and I was not falling asleep once. I was too awake.
Promise?
This is interesting. Promise. I would not tell you a story.
You can sleep in tomorrow.
I
That's
will, dear.
okay.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
And thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been Laurie McQuary. And please go to her website, Laurie McQuary. I'm going to say LaurieMcQuary.com because it's easy to get there instead of adding the other one.
Okay, yeah, it'll link in. You'll find it.
It'll link.
All
Again,
right, dear.
LaurieMcQuary.com. And you have a wonderful weekend, what's left of it, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, dear. You take care now. Bye-bye.
You too. And I want everybody else to be available for tomorrow, Sunday night. We have 2 mediums and a large. We have Joanna Banca and we have Paisley Town. They're coming back in to drive you crazy by talking to you about stuff that only you were really supposed to know. That's tomorrow night, 2 mediums and a large. And eventually, oh, that's right, I don't get to hear the music tonight. Only Dave does. So I'm going to say goodbye because I'm pretty sure if we're not off the air now, we should be soon. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Revolution Radio and those on iTunes. And if you missed part of this, like Andrew from Australia did, you can always pick it up tomorrow on YouTube. Or check us out in our lovely website of spacedoutradio.com. again, thanks everybody out. Thanks everyone out there. I really appreciate it. And we should be coming back with some really good programming in the week. And if you don't know what's coming up, go to spacedoutradio.com, see what's on the list, and you will see what Dave has up his long, gangly sleeves. And I'll see what he is wanting to do with me. Well, I know what he wants to do with me. He wants me to take me out on some kind of Sasquatch hunt. What the heck? Am I going to be carrying the bait again, Dave? Dave? Am I the bait? Oh, great. I hate that. But I look like Carmen Moran with that.
That's the way we roll around here, man.
We do.
There we go.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Talk to you soon.